Hi, it's Michael. Welcome to week 6. Um, Thank you all for all your hard work. It's been really fun watching you struggle and try to come to terms with what the goals are for this HTML work. And I hope you have started to see a little bit of the bigger picture, right? Which is the bigger picture isn't really about the complexity of markup or how many tags. The three things that I wanted you to experiment with is to one, understand a controlled vocabulary, right? That you've got a database and you can describe things to your heart's content, but when you move out to display these things, you're going to have to figure out like how to bring that context of this is the name of this and this is this part of this record. You need to bring those into some I'd say generic way. It's much like design. In fact, we're going to get right into design momentarily because when you're designing, you're just using typography and boxes and so forth to kind of give context to the information you're trying to convey. And I was serious last week. If you want to look back, there's the idea that the design can change and the markup does not have to change. That I think is really powerful as an information architect. For example, if you were designing a house, you would say, well, here's the living room, and the living room is sort of this big and has these features. And then there's the kitchen and has these features. And you see, you're kind of putting these boxes and these names around things so that people understand them. And you don't want to get too deep into the details, I guess, because what people want is to see what is the main goal here. And one of the biggest things I'm going to be looking at when I'm grading your work is just the idea, are you understanding hierarchy, right? Are you understanding how headers work? And how they inform context by having things that are next to each other. So, a lot of ideas. One thing I was extremely pleased about is, aren't we all happy we can use tools like GPT because studying taxonomies can be a challenge. I'm not saying you couldn't find it if you were just searching Google, but GPT is the master at building taxonomies, and I think it's good to note that because part of the world we're exploring is like this is how GPT works. Like we start to build these structures, and if you are clever enough at each stage of these structures, it'll build you a lot more opportunity to change things later. I wanted to open up a couple of other things. Unique words are very important. I think the goal of that is if you've ever seen a ad on Craigslist, there'll be a long list of hashtags. I guess this week was the hashtag week, right? So if you put enough hashtags on something, when people search, they might find your content. And that's really important to know, like what are the really unique terms that you have to work with. That's a good job, just in general in terms of understanding SEO and other ways that people find things, but uniqueness works. Structural things, obviously the thing I want to look for and the change from last week is where do you put in your structure for a record the taxonomy information, because that's going to need to be shown because sooner or later you're going to use that for someone to find something, because if all of your records are unique, you can't find anything. Or let's say you can. There are two ways to organize things. One is by alphabet, right? So if you're in a building and you want to find a particular business name or person name, right, you go by the alphabet because that's the only way to organize things that really inherently have no other sense of organization, at least like things, right? So, and the other way is date, I guess, right? So you can always say, hey, this is more recent than that. So I can always sort by date if you have a date. So you can sort numerically, right? You can sort by numbers or by letters, and but neither of those are very sophisticated, and you don't need an advanced degree to come up with those sort of things. So we want more purposeful ways of organizing. And so our architecture and our record itself is a purposeful way of organizing something. We have distinct groups and patterns. One hope is that you'll see that in the next work that we do, that you can actually not show a lot of your data. That's actually a goal that you could only show maybe the small header portion in a list because you're going to start to repeat yourself a lot. So another thing I'm going to be looking for is don't have a ton of markup to not really do any work. You want your markup to actually provide meaningful context so that you can manipulate it later. And manipulation is the goal of this week. We're going to talk verbs. Verbs are doing things, right? So verbs are, well, you get to do two things this week. One is you've been thinking and working in your own world pretty much for 5 weeks, right? You haven't really shown this to anybody else. So let's say you were actually coming up with all these things. How do you demonstrate it or get feedback from your peers or demonstrate it to stakeholders? So this is the kind of beginning of this. We're gonna use this concept of words. How do you use words to get around? So we're really gonna segue into navigation. So this is and you might understand this if you were going to design street signs or something. You don't start by saying what does the street sign look like. You really start with the system. What are we trying to organize? What are the possibilities? How can people move around this? And the nice thing about navigation is that you know, you can kind of make this up. This is a layer on top. These are things, the only constraint right now about navigation concepts, and that's one of the exercises this week. We're going to go into navigation patterns, and I'd like you to just explore. Like, you'll see these all over the place, but I'd like each of you to find one and share it with the group. You know, go look for this type of navigation, and I got an example right here. Um, you know, you'll see these are just conventions, really, and I want you to be aware of the conventions because in a couple weeks or in a week or so, you're going to start using these conventions to demonstrate what your stuff looks like because most people want to see this. They don't want to see the HTML. They don't want to see all this work that you do behind the scenes. They want to just see what's the way you're going to navigate. One issue with navigation is brevity. You don't get a lot of it. So if you go over here, I'm trying to find ways to organize my perfumes, right? So I'm coming up with some things. I don't think a lot of these are, this isn't terribly clever, by the way. It's just an example. You could probably do a much better job than I did, but I wanted to put out some of those taxonomical words so that people can start to say, well, these are the ways that people will likely want to navigate by browsing. Airbnb does a nice job here where they invent a lot of concepts so that they organize their data and help you organize it by conceptual kinds of places, right? You know, so you can be very creative here. In fact, this is just a book, but this is a book about movies, and all it does is organize things by the goal of the movie, or at least their idea of what the goal is. So I like this, right? This is what this week is about. You can come up with ways to organize your information for different kinds of goals. And it seems like this is a huge leap, and it is a huge leap. So as always, get engaged in sharing. Right now, the way you're going to create your sitemap, we'll call it this, which it tends to be like a way of demonstrating, doesn't have to necessarily be your website, so don't worry about what websites looks like. What you're trying to do is this is the way people can navigate your content. That's really what it is. Like, what is the content? What are the ways you can group them at a very high level? And you are constrained. You really only have like 4 or 5, some say seven ways and maybe some subways. So it's like once you've chosen one thing, you can choose another. So you've got examples over here of how to put these on the screen. But right now, I'm only interested in what are the words, right? What are the words you're going to use? And how do you do that? You can draw it on a piece of paper. You can put it in any sort of drawing program. We're going to be using Figma to do a lot of our work. If you haven't used Figma, it's a just a nice drawing program, and you can share. I'd share a picture here. I'd like to look at it. So, you know, you can use the tool, which is fantastic. We'll be again doing more stuff in Figma later. But right now, I'd like to sort of see like what are your ideas? What are the words? What are the subwords that you could get one or more of your records to show up in. So site mapping, there's plenty to read. There's also videos on this. So good luck for this week, and thank you for your work last week. And we're working toward assignment 3, which is actually going to be visualizing all this, and it's going to be 3 weeks from now. That'll be due, and then it's the final. So we're on our second leg. Good luck to everyone. Let me know if I can help, and talk soon.